Welcome to Sunny Silver Linings. Sunny's guest on this episode is Larry Cobrin. Larry is the CEO and co-founder of MSPCFO, a cloud-based business intelligence platform designed to give MSP owners actionable insights into and control over their finances. Larry has an MBA in finance and is a well-known expert and trusted speaker in the MSP community. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kaila. Over to you, Sunny.
Thank you, Todd. And Larry, welcome to our podcast. And thank you so much for joining us today. I know you are the thought leader when it comes to MSPs, especially agreements and finance. And you have so much experience and wisdom and tools to help the channel. And I'm just so excited about having a conversation with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right, let's jump right into it. So, Larry, a lot of times small problems can have a large impact. I think we can all agree on that. What are some of those small problems and where do you start, to address them as a business owner?
First place I would start is actually understanding where the problems are. Before you solve the problems, you have to find the problems. And I'll give you an example. If you have a typical mid-sized MSP that has, let's say, 60 to 80 clients, what you will typically see, and we've seen this across just about all of our clients, there's a distribution. There's a distribution of less profitable clients all the way up to very profitable clients. And if you look at the average might be okay, or it might be a little bit low. And if you were to look at it on a product line, perhaps with the agreements are maybe about right. The problem is or even a little bit low. What you need to do when you see that situation is you need to say, well, what can I do? What action can I take that will have the largest impact? What's the best return on my effort? And as it turns out, rather than fixing those 60 to 80 clients, there's usually 3, 4, 5 clients that are all the way over on the side, on the less profitable side, that if you address those, sometimes you can pick up maybe 10% more revenue or reduce your headcount, depending on whether you attack it by getting more, improving your pricing or by reducing your utilization. So out of 60 clients, you're attacking 5. And then what you do is you sort of take a journey, you peel back the onion, whatever metaphor you want to use, to try to understand why those are bad clients. And you might realize that, well, for particular clients, and I'll just give a very specific example. We do see this fairly often. Their agreements are mispriced. It's a legacy agreement and it's mispriced. The price per endpoint, the price per user is below everybody else's. Perhaps you added user and you never changed the pricing. Or on a different situation, and it's important to consider this to be different, you might have a client where they have too many tickets and they're trying to understand how to best use Microsoft Office and they have lots of Outlook issues. Or perhaps they're doing too many install, move, add, change, too much iMac stuff. And now you have 3 different clients and they're all bad, all of your lower performing quality. And what you need to do to fix them is very narrow solutions with each of them. With that first client we discussed, you have that difficult conversation about pricing. You're doing about the right amount of work, but it's a legacy agreement and the client is at a bad pricing level and you have a conversation. And usually if you can focus on the pricing, they might know that it's not correctly priced. Or if you look at the second client, where they have too many small line of business or Outlook or Office issues, you realize perhaps we need to look at their software package they have and maybe do some lunch and learns and train them, depending on how basic it is, or if it's more advanced, an accounting piece of software, very specific, understand about that software so that you can drive down the ticket count for that particular issue. And in the third situation where you have too many install, move, add, change, too much iMac work, you might want to consider, well, if this client is doing this constantly, it should be cut out of the agreement and we should have them pay for it separately because they're kind of abusing our scope of work in the sense they're really hitting us hard on something that takes a lot of time. And the important thing is we have 3 clients that started out as bad. And what we ended with is 3 separate solutions. I will tell you very often when I speak to, when we all collectively used to travel and we used to go to a conference floor and speak to lots of different MSPs, we would talk to them about, well, how do you fix your problems? And they would have these massive, statements. Well, I would just raise pricing across the board. That's not the right answer. There's some of your clients that are highly profitable. They're going to insult it and put you out to bid if you raise their prices. And you have some clients where the pricing is right, but there's an operational issue. There really isn't a single blunt instrument that's always best to use. Pricing can be the answer sometimes, but you also have to acknowledge it's not always the answer. And sometimes if it's unfixable, you ask the client to leave. But the point is you're focusing on 3 to 5 clients. And that's what a big problem with agreement profitability becomes a very small issue, potentially with 1 or 2 issues within each of those clients. Having the right information allows you to get to that and solve it the right way.
Yeah, so Larry made a great point in terms of identifying your core issue first, and then knowing what to fix next. Because a lot of leaders, they make mistake of either overcommitting themselves in terms of picking their rocks or projects for their quarterly rocks or projects. So knowing what to fix. So we use L10, we use EOS, Todd, and we do the IDS, right? Identify the root cause of the issue. We then discuss it and we solve it, and then we take action, and then we pick right issues, we pick right action items. So agreement profitability, for example, from my experience, can come from either the users that are not educated enough to leverage the MSP as their IT department, or it can be some, you just need to spend some time and reflect on why of that agreement being read. And then, as Larry said, then pick your battles so that you are not trying to fix all the clients at the same time. You first pick top 3 to 5 clients, identify what needs to be fixed, what is the root cause. And I just want to add one thing to, I think Larry covered almost all the major areas in terms of why these agreements are sometimes read. But one thing that from my experience, we have had sometimes issues with the customers being read, or we mark them read just because of the culture alignment as well. Because sometimes we are, for example, we believe in that happy core values, and we really put our people first. And we truly believe in, if we take care of our people and we have a happy team, and they're positive, they're productive, and they're going to take care of the customer and give them the right experience. But sometimes the client will have a totally different culture, the way their business philosophy or their approach towards business. They are not treating our people with that professionalism and what they need to bring to the table. Then we mark those customers red. So if there's a core value misalignment from the customer or partner point of view and the company, that's another reason why sometimes that person is not the right person for us. So from MSP experience that we have, Larry, are you seeing still that 65% as a target? So like we target 65% in terms of agreement profitability. Is that still the industry trend and standard that you see?
So it actually gets a little bit complicated because there's agreement product and agreement labor. You sell tools. You might even sell big ticket items like a BDR.
Yeah.
The margins on those will always be thinner. So if you look at overall agreement profitability, those agreements where you bundle in high-priced recurring product sales will have lower margins, not because they're bad agreements, because you have an ancillary product that has a low margin on it. We like to look at it more, what should be your target labor margin and what should be your target product margin. Labor margins should be 65, 70%, maybe a little better. And your product margin should be in the 20 to 40% range. Obviously, Office 365 is a very thin product. There are other products where you can make some good money, maybe if you manufacture your own cloud service.
So there resold services or agreements with the resold services, for example, Data BDR,
Yes.
for example, Office 365. And then there are agreements, service agreements, where you have to have your engineers, your service delivery cost, and on top of that, you need to have your tool cost, right?
Right. With those, we typically, I would think if it's just the thin tools, because that's a relatively small percentage of the total value. It's when you add those big ticket items. That probably 65% sounds about right. But again, rather than shooting for a particular margin, even if your number is 65, or your number is 70, or your number is 55, you can get that number up usually by a few points by focusing on a few clients. And the other thing to think about, everybody likes to fix bad clients, as well we should, because there's work to be done. It's actually kind of interesting to dig into it. What's the problem? Can I apply a solution? The other side's actually equally important. Who's that client that you're making a 90% margin on? That client that, because you're such a wonderful MSP, you built a perfect stack and they never call you. It's funny, I go to meetings. You've sat in the room, I'm sure, at some of these meetings, and someone will say, well, why would they ever fire me? They appreciate that I built them a perfect stack. And one person says that, and the other 9 people turn and look at that individual and shake their head. Because they will. Because if they're not talking to you very often, they might put you out to bid regardless of how well you put together their technology. So again, it is focusing on both sides. And no matter where you are, there's always that distribution of some that are below the line and some that are above. So we focus more on the individual clients, because those clients, you'll get 1 or 2 or 3 points per client.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Sunny.
Go ahead.
I'll just add that end. Go ahead.
Okay, so we can pause here, Mr. Editor, and then restart here. So can we make, Larry, a few points in terms of maybe 1 or 2 more examples in terms of from the impact filter point of view, that smaller problem, bigger impact. And I think you are making a great point, and I see with our peer group team members and overall in general, people just pick on too many rocks at the same time, and then they don't end up doing anything well. And I want to share that with our channel partners, that pick less but do well there. So kind of go deep into that. First of all, do some deep work on few things that you pick, smaller problems that you pick, so quick wins that we call it, right? So let's take quick wins examples from your perspective, and then probably share some quick wins examples. Okay. So Larry, you always talk about small problems, but higher impact, that high impact. And then, so having, picking the right problems to fix and having quick wins before you take on too many things and not end up doing well in any one of those items. So can you talk to us a little bit about pick less but do well?
Right. I mean, that goes to the concept that, so when people sit in their peer groups and they pass around, if they use service leadership or a different metric in their different peer groups, they look at their numbers and they realize they're 4 points below average, 8 points below best in class. What they need to do is they need to say, how am I going to add 4 or 8 points to my bottom line? And what they need to do is they need to realize among their portfolio, there are a couple that if they focus and drill into and they bring in the right people, if you have a pricing situation, bring in your account manager, because you're going to have a conversation. If you have an operational issue, they're overutilizing you, bring in your project manager, bring in your operations manager. There is the possibility that they're overutilizing you because they have lousy systems. And then that's win-win, because you're constantly fixing tickets that take a while to resolve because the systems are lousy. Well, there's a project sale to do a refresh. But do it client by client. And I will tell you that the numbers that we have seen, each individual client on the underperforming side can have an outsized return on the bottom line. If there are many reasons, and I'm using this just as an example, to switch RMM tools. But if you want to add 1 to 2 points of margin, rather than saying, I am going to swap out my RMM tool and all the upheaval that's going to be associated with that, you can take it much smaller. and say, you know what, this quarter, I'm going to focus on my 2 underperforming clients. I'm going to do a deep dive. And my takeaway is I'm going to say, I have the problem with this client because of A, B, and C. I will assign A, B, and C to the appropriate parties, and they will come back to me at the end of the quarter and fix that. What they're going to do is they're going to add 2 points to the bottom line. You're not asking them for 2 points to the bottom line. You realize that this client who already has a relationship with you, who calls you for help, who wants you to be their resource, wants to stay with you, is sitting on 1 to 2 points of margin. And every quarter, just make it your goal. Look at 1 client, look at 2 clients, look at 3 clients. Things change. An average client could become bad. Something will happen. Every quarter, take that list, drill into it, understand the problem, and create a solution. Because again, changing your RMM tool might get you there, but wouldn't you rather start small and change your RMM, for whatever reason you need to, but don't count it as being a save-all. And I don't mean to disparage any of the tools that are out there.
Yeah, and so one of the challenges that I see when we are looking at the reports, we're looking at, okay, first of all, knowing what to look for, what to review, when to review, right, and having your systems in place that is efficient process, that you get data in a real time, or the accuracy of the data, and then accessibility to that data with the ease of use, and from the overall user experience perspective, having the data visual, being the right visual. So talking about that, what are your suggestions for MSP partners? What are few things or strategies that they can use to make sure that they have the right data, accuracy of the data, and the frequency that from the best practices perspective?
Sure, it's a great question, and one that we hear a lot. We work with a lot of MSPs from $1 million US in revenues to 20 million, or I think actually we have one that's 40 million in revenue. I will tell you every single one of them, from the $1 million to the 20 million or 40 million, has data issues. Being a company that utilizes that data to get reporting, we appreciate the value of good data, and we work very closely with our clients to clean it up. The issue is, some people will say, well, I don't want to work with a reporting system because my data is not good. But what they have to understand is that means they can't work with any reporting system. They can't trust what comes out of ConnectWise. If they use Brightgauge or use some other tool, they can't trust it. If they work with a company like ours, which is a little bit more, we use the data a little bit more robustly, they can't trust it. So at some point, to enter into this game, your cost of admission to use data is to clean up your data. And there are lots of people that will help you with it. We help our clients when they onboard. There are coaches and consultants, and we work mostly with ConnectWise, and ConnectWise consultants that will help you to clean up your data. It is 100% a worthwhile exercise. It is 100% a cost of admission, because in my opinion, it's actually worse to make a decision with confidence based on bad information than to be hesitant because you don't trust the information. You may go in guns blazing and say, I'm going to have this horrible conversation with this client, or I'm going to beat up this engineer because they're not productive. And you wouldn't do that unless you had confidence, but your confidence was false because the data wasn't good. Definitely do an assessment. Okay, so that's the first step. The second step is to build in processes. As we just mentioned, Sunny, I would say that, whether you do it at, you've got a lot of, we talked about this a little earlier, you have a lot going on. With all of your businesses, make sure somebody comes to you and says, listen, I looked at the numbers and I can tell you a story. Whether it's your the outsourced business, or it's the IT by design or staffing by design or anything else, they'll say, listen, we are here. I'm pretty sure we can get to here if we fix this problem. Let me tell you why. And that's what we do with our clients when we work with them. We would say, listen, here is an underperforming client. That's a starting point. I can show you they're underperforming because their agreement is mispriced or overutilized. It's overutilized because there are too many tickets that fall into a particular subtype and item. Let me show you that and we'll take it forward. And that has to be the goal of somebody on your team, to say, I can present to the appropriate parties on a regular basis what's needed to move the company forward. And again, you talk about these big picture items. When we think about metrics, there's only one metric, I think, that really matters, and everything else drives that metric. And that's how much you can reliably take home every year. But we don't want to say it's just about that, because that metric is driven by customer satisfaction. It's driven by your ability to instill culture. It's driven by your ability to sell products, still by your ability to keep clients happy and service them properly. So what you need to do is say, well, if I want to drive my bottom line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what's driving that number. And I'm going to tell a story. And when you're able to do that, what you will see is it will have the right effect. I've had lots of conversations with people, and they talk about, well, we don't try to drive the bottom line. We don't do this. We try to drive culture, because culture drives everything else. And they're right. Same token, metrics drive other numbers. Key issues drive other numbers. So you should have someone tell you, Sunny, let's talk about this. I want to show you point A, which is driven by point B, which is driven by point C. We fix point C, it'll all float back up and everything will look much better. So yeah. It's about getting the process of having somebody tell you a story, whether it's an application that tells you the story or an individual.
Yeah. And Larry, as you said, no tool can help you if you don't have the accuracy of the data in your database, right? It could be any PSA, it could be any accounting package, garbage in, garbage out, right? So
100%.
So if you no matter which tool you're using, in order for you that tool to be leveraged, first of all, you have to do some groundwork, making sure that you have the right processes to have the right data in the whatever system that you're using. And then tools are there to just help you pull that accurate data out of the system and make it very easy for you to see the problems that you need to see as a CEO, as a leader, to make sure that your top line and bottom line, you are aware and you are intentional about fixing those problems. And tool is just to help you identify right issues, right clients, and who are your top clients, who are your poor performing clients. So well said there, and thank you for sharing.
I'm going to record you saying that and play it to every one of my prospects. I should everybody else who has a data tool. And it's not just that. I mean, any CRM tool, nothing works unless you have the good data.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for one to know what that data looks like and what good looks like there, you need a tool to get there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So Todd, what is our next question?
So we're going to talk a little bit about, when I mentally picture a CFO's office, what I picture is a whole lot of reports piled up on desks, just paperwork everywhere. Can you talk to us a little bit about actionable reports versus informational reports, and share a couple of examples of those actionable reports that MSP business owners should be looking at on a regular basis?
Sure. That's a good question. And it's one that we talk about a lot. It's a little bit situational. So I'll give you an example. Cash in the bank is an informational metric. You're not really knowing how much cash doesn't mean you're going to change your operations, but it might mean how you spend money down the road. It does drive a little bit of action. Actionable metrics are something that it's almost, if you're trying to accomplish something, what is the starting point to figure out what you need to accomplish? There's a framework for defining actionable. I'll give you an example. Informational metrics, my agreements aren't profitable enough. Okay. The question I ask is, what are you going to do about that? Well, you're going to look for more metrics, but that doesn't really count. Are you going to fix anything from that? If I tell you agreement 12 or whatever agreement you have, there are too many service calls on password resets. That's an actionable metric. I'm going to find out what password tool they're using. I'm going to find out how well it's installed, how well they're trained on it, and I will drive down that ticket count. That's an actionable metric. If we find out that your projects aren't as profitable as you'd like to be, that's informational. I know that. Okay, that's fine. If I tell you have 4 types of projects and 3 types are profitable and 1 type is low profit, well, now that I've categorized my projects, I can say, well, this particular project type, I'm underpricing. Or I can say, well, Actual metrics, informational metrics might be in the category of, I think an engineer isn't busy enough. Okay, well, you can just throw more work in it, but that's not really the right point. Actionable metrics are giving that engineer a target to shoot for that they can follow, which will drive their productivity. And we personally preach, we're not so much about our productivity, we're about dollar productivity. And for anybody overseas, let's call it currency productivity. The reason we say that is because if you have a fixed fee agreement, it's 3:00 in the afternoon and you're an engineer, and I'm sure there is no engineer that does this, they could dump 2 more hours into a fixed fee agreement and have 2 more billable hours for the day. No skin off the client's back because they're not charging anymore. It's all covered by the agreement, but you're not getting any more productivity out of it. So what we do is we actually look at it to drive action to say, listen, each agreement has a certain value. If you work an extra 2 hours, you're not going to make any more money because that agreement is only worth so much. And what it does is it drives them to be focused on the productivity of what they can do. So it's a long way about to answer your question. And Sunny, I'd actually put it back to you as well. If you look at metrics, and I have one anecdote I'll throw in as well. If you look at metrics and you say, well, when somebody tells me that, okay, wait a minute. I think I can do something about it. That's what an actual metric is. And I'll tell you a story. Back in a previous life, when I worked at Citigroup, we were running the directed share program for a company called the VoIP company called Vonage. The person who ran the company, who was not a very nice person, came into one of our meetings and just started talking to us. And somebody had chimed in and said something interesting. And he was a bit of a jerk about it, but he said, what am I going to do with that information? Move on, next issue. And in a nice way, that's kind of the way you need to think about it. If somebody wants to show off that they know a number, acknowledge it, don't dwell. If somebody wants to give you a problem that you can help with a solution, that merits your time. So I mean, with your businesses, don't you see similar things that, you'll get through everything much faster if somebody gives you the data that you need as an operator to fix?
Absolutely. So that was one of my challenge that, you get a lot of reports during the monthly closing, during the annual or quarterly. And then you're like, okay, I have looked at my balance sheet, my cash flow, my P&L, and then P&L by division or product, agreement profitability. Now what? So it was, okay, this report. Then we shifted a little bit that, okay, so what are we going to do with these reports? And it was, it took us time, but slowly we figured it out using the EOS L10 system when we are like, okay, now our CFO, when we have that one-on-one on a monthly basis, when we do the closing, it will be, okay, bring those reports, but also give me the list of issues or actionable data that if you see something, then you want something that you want me to work on, highlight that in red. So now she will color code this, red items, amber, and green. Green means that's more of information for me, and we are doing well, and we should just continue doing well in that area. And if it's amber, okay, it's an alert, early warning system. And if it's red, that is P1. And what we will do is that she will come as part of EOS. There's an IDS time, which is 60 minutes out of 90 minutes. You're just discussing issues. So she will put issues from the reports that what she has uncovered from reviewing the monthly reports into issues list. And then we will solve those issues and put action items in our action tracker. And then we assign that. And some items could be for me. Some items could be for that P&L owner. So depending on where that item needs to be executed, we kind of share that action plan with the right person. Now, another piece that I have seen there is that along with a lot of reports, a lot of data that used to be there, leading indicators versus lagging indicators. So now on a weekly basis, when we meet, me and my CFO, we don't need to look at the 30-day view from the historical point of view or historical data, and so we look at some KPIs that we need to proactively manage. Because what happened in the past, you can only learn from it. You can just use that data to transform your experience. But what's coming your way? So for example, perfect example is your MRR revenue versus your variable revenue. So in the MSP world, you have that annuity revenue, the monthly recurring revenue, and that's, normally majority of us as MSPs, we register that recurring revenue in the beginning of the month. And then all that spending throughout the month is your products revenue, your projects, so hardware, software sale to projects. And that's a leading indicator where on a weekly basis, if my CFO will see that, okay, we need to, for example, get to $50,000 in products revenue, and we are at $2,000, and this is week 2, then she will highlight that Sunny, you got to focus here a little bit. And that helps me be proactive with my sales team, with my products team, where they are taking care of the customer's hardware and software, that, hey team, this is our monthly target, and how are we doing, and how can I help you to meet our monthly target? So proactively looking at some of these data points that matter, where if they are given to the leader or in advance, leader can do something about it, take that action to make sure that you are managing that journey to success by the end of the month.
That's exactly right. And I think what you find is that the people that focus like that waste less time. I'm sure, I don't know when you implemented EOS, but it really is about the rocks and the improvements. And it's the whole mentality that it's very easy to be stagnant. And if you make the effort, you can move forward. But you can only move forward if you engage in activities and focus on what does move you forward. If you focus on what happened yesterday, it's interesting. You should be aware of it. And as you said, it's a learning experience, but it's not going to move you forward.
Yeah. And what used to happen, Larry, I'm getting, so it's like, after the fact, you do your monthly closing, and then my CFO is saying, okay, we had this revenue budget for example, projects or products or anything that's not recurring in nature, and we don't have that fixed fee going to the customer. And that's where I'm like, okay, so we did not do well here, or we did extremely well here, but it's after the fact. Now, when I ask for some numbers on a weekly basis, and I know if I don't stay on top of those numbers on a weekly basis, we will not have a good month. Because as you know, in the managed services business, your recurring revenue kind of pays for majority of your expenses, but that variable revenue or revenue that is coming from block of hours, projects, products, that is the revenue that will make or break your month. And if Absolutely. You are proactive there with those leading indicators, and you know what those leading indicators are, and you can focus there, then you can manage your journey to success for that month.
Absolutely. No, you're speaking some very relevant information. Your recurring revenue, less fixed cost, less your overhead, should be enough to cover your overhead. Whether or not you sell transactional work, that's your profit. That defines a good or a bad month.
I think this is a good pivot point here where we talk about, that one-time growth or, growing that reoccurring revenue. Larry, why is it important to understand the drivers of growth within the organization? What drives it?
Well, it goes back to the point we were just discussing, which is it's all about moving the company forward. And it's easy to both be stagnant, and by that's in the same realm of inefficiency, to focus on the wrong things. If, as Sunny puts it Sunny, you put it with, you need to understand that you will move forward if you constantly focus on transactional work. When it slows down, you need to apply a little pressure. If it's going fast, maybe you can focus on other things. But you understand, for IT by design to have a good quarter or to have a good month, you have to sell. If you focus on your service delivery for your recurring revenue, that's fine, but that won't really make it have a great quarter. That'll make sure you have a more stable business. Recurring revenue is critically important when you want to sell your business. It's all about recurring revenue. But month to month, putting cash in the bank, as you put it, you need to focus particularly on your transactional. Other people need to understand that their growth might come from a particular vertical. And they need to say, well, my growth is going to be when I go further into perhaps dentistry. If they understand that, they can focus on dental growth for that particular client. The major things that prevent companies from being successful are, to put it back in its own words, is not trying hard enough to be successful. And to be successful, you need to do what it takes to move forward. And to do what it takes to move forward, you need to know what to do to move it. So you need to focus on the agreements. You need to focus on the transactional sales. You need to focus on all that so that those drivers will drive you to the next level. Sort of a roundabout answer.
And Larry, so I have a question around growth. So year over year growth, when you look at we're talking like benchmarking in terms of the MSP channel. So is there any, I know majority of the organizations where they are benchmarking numbers, it could be SLI, it could be other methods out there. So they are normally recommending 15% plus EBITDA and X percentage of growth year over year in terms of top line. So do you have any advice for our partners what is that right top line growth percentage and that EBITDA in terms of year over year?
This is where I would admit my lack of knowledge on this particularly, because first of all, our particular system, we don't look at EBITDA. We only look at the profitability up to gross profit line. We refer to it as the contribution. The way we look at the business is that you're a multi-store retailer, just a little bit of a side story. If you're a multi-store retailer, you got to manage your portfolio of stores. Some are profitable, some are less so. The same as you don't have stores, you have clients. So you want to manage how much money you're making from your clients. So we look at this up to the gross profit line. Overhead is not about the clients, it's about the home office. And as it turns out, also that information is not in your PSA. We only pull from the PSA. So that's the first thing. The second thing is focusing on growth. And, we haven't done as much work historically on what the growth should be quarter over quarter. But I will tell you, we have looked in the past at focus, how well people do based on their vertical focus. And what we did is a study we did a little while back. We looked at 3 avenues. Non-focus, which means no one sector has more than, the top 3 sectors don't have more than 10%. Medium is the top 3 sectors are 10 to 25% of revenue. And then top 3 sectors over 25% as you're focused in your verticals. What we found is that the unfocused and the extremely focused had faster growth. The extremely focused had the most fast growth. And the middle had the slowest. And I think the reason is because in the middle, you kind of haven't accomplished anything. You're not at vertical focus. You probably have a variety of different issues. But the reason the ones that grow the fastest are the ones that focus on verticals. And this is what I would suggest to most MSPs. I would have done this pre-COVID, is that in that vertical, you are getting referrals. You're getting positive comments. You're into a particular industry. And I think that helps a lot with growth. In the middle means that you just haven't been successful with that. So for people who are trying to grow, I don't have a great number for you, but what we did look at is the people that are vertically focused do grow faster, typically than the ones that are not.
Yeah, what do you think about the risk involved when you are just focused on one vertical? Because, just as an example, what I have experienced with some of our partners, and we have 300 plus MSP partners right now, where a couple of partners where they were just focused on one vertical, for example, dental, and that practice being closed, their revenue was not diversified in terms of vertical, and they struggled a lot just because of that vertical being closed. So what's your viewpoint there? Managing your risk. It's a great question.
It's a great question. I said that my view was this pre-COVID. Post-COVID, I'll take it one step further. We have a client that we work with. All they do is install technology at new hotels. They came to a dead stop. Their people weren't traveling to do a technology installation. The hotels weren't spending money. No new hotels were opening. I mean, the hospitality industry, we all know, is just collectively in the pits. That's a 100-year flood, and that's a problem. So, and who would have thought that hospitality would be hit? Who would have thought the pandemic would have hit this year? And I say that because we don't know what the next issue is going to be. All of us being of a certain age, I've lived through, I worked in private equity during 9/11. I was working at Citigroup during 2008, and I'm working now in this industry during COVID. Each seismic shock to the industry was unpredicted. Each seismic shock to the industry is completely distinct, which is to say there will be another one in 8 to 10 years, and we have no idea what it's going to be. So if you take that out of the equation, you're better to be focused. If you say, my goodness, something like 9/11, 2008, or another pandemic is going to hit in 8 to 10 years, then you need to start thinking about hedging and saying, I want to cover my bases and have uncorrelated industries. But the problem with that is we don't know what the next issue is going to be. Is there going to be World War III? Is there going to be another pandemic? Is there going to be famine or flood? We don't know. Yeah. So it's hard for me to predict on that. So you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. And do you think there is some kind of balance approach where, yes. So I totally agree with the laser focus and going so deep into one vertical that you are the expert of the experts. And that is, so when you look at the IT by design success, that, like high growth journey that we have had, that is because of being very focused on one vertical, which is the MSP vertical. And that gave us so much more success than when we were just focusing on small, medium-sized businesses in New York City with many different verticals. And so there is that proven value that we have seen by focusing on one vertical. Now, do you think is there some kind of balance where, okay, maybe not one vertical, maybe have your expertise in 2 to 3 verticals, that just in case if there is one, there is an impact. It could be 9/11 type of situation where finance vertical is impacted because of being too close to the finance district. Right. And yeah, so maybe having like more than one, but not having everything, not being everything for everyone, but at the same time having that little bit of diversification though.
It is the one challenge. I mean, yes, the challenge is, and this is a fun game to play, is you have to find uncorrelated industries. What happens if you go into dental and you say, you know what, I'm going to go into hospitality because dental and hospitality have nothing in common with each other. They both happen to get hit by the pandemic. If you had essential workers and government services, they were both in full force during the pandemic. So it's a tough game to play. It's one worthwhile to think through. But as we said, these last 3 seismic shocks to our system were unpredicted and they're totally unrelated. So I don't know how to plan for the next one.
So Larry, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so much fun and a lot of valuable information. And I truly believe that if you focus on your numbers, you focus on the right priorities, and you know what are your leading and lagging financial KPIs, and then you put that math and science behind your numbers. And then you can take your organization for that sustainable growth, and you're a successful entrepreneur. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of valuable insights. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure chatting with you, and whatever we can share with the community to help everything move forward.
All right. And Larry, if one of our viewers or a couple of our viewers says, wow, I really need to understand how to dig into my agreements and understand what's profitable, what's not. And, what's the best way to reach out to you and learn a little bit about MSP CFO?
Sure. So we would love to share what MSP CFO can do to help with anybody. You can come to our website, www.mspcfo.com. We have some collateral on there that you can take a look at. There's a contact us form. Anybody who wants to understand what we can do with their data, we're always happy to do what we call a real demo, where we'll feed your data into our system and we'll A, give you some insights as to what's going on with your business, and B, more importantly, let you know whether or not your data looks relatively clean. We've been doing this enough that we can see it pretty quickly. And I will tell you that on those calls, some of our clients get some very, very good insights. Anybody who wants to, we're more than welcome to talk to them. Right now, we're only working with ConnectWise. We're in a beta program right now with Autotask. We hope to have done by the end of the year. Feel free to reach out. We're always looking to meet some nice, interesting people.
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Sunny. And to the viewers, thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Sunny Silver Linings. Please honor us with a like, a share, and a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.